Aadil woke up in the forest, confused. Nearby was the girl, also waking up. He asked her what happened, but she didn't know. Henry! Aadil shouted suddenly, remembering his friend. Aadil, a man's voice came from behind. Did you bring us here? The girl asked him. The man nodded. He called you Dante, the princess asked, noticing something strange. His hair was as white as a man of 60 or 70, but his face said he could be no more than 35 or something. He nodded, saying he was asked by Patrick to help them. Aadil asked about Henry. But he didn't say anything, only lowered his gaze and led them to where Henry was, under a tree beside the lake. Aadil rushed to him. He knew it was Henry, but his eyes widened the moment he saw his face, his breath stuck in his chest. Aadil, Henry said in a struggling voice. His face was blackened, his eyes blood-red. What happened to you? Brother, what is this? Aadil kneeled, putting a hand on Henry's shoulder. I don't have much time, Henry spoke so quietly that even Aadil, close as he was, could barely hear. Don't say that. Nothing is going to happen to you. Not on my watch. Aadil turned to call the others, but they were already standing beside them. We have to save him. The princess looked horrified, and Dante stood ashamed as if he had failed. Henry grabbed Aadil's hand. Aadil, please don't. I am not letting you die like this. What happened to him? How this happened? Aadil demanded to know, his eyes fixed on Dante, hoping he had the answer. Ronan has stabbed him with some poisoned blade. Something this world doesn't have a cure for. When he figured that I was going to take you all out of there, he tried to ensure that I only left with corpses. He only managed to get Henry. We can't just give up. Life and death are not in our hands. At least, not directly and entirely. Even in the tremendous pain, Henry smiled. Maybe it was his last smile. No. You are not dying. Aadil protested and shook his head like a mad dog. Please, let me have my final words with you. Henry held Aadil's hand tightly. Please, he begged. Aadil had understood that Henry was dying, and he had to accept it. It was going to be their final moment. Tears came to his eyes. I need you to promise me that you will save Princess Aislinn from Crane. The elf princess blinked twice. It was surprising for her to believe that a dying man was worried about his enemy's sister. She is in that place because of us, he said in a trembling voice. I promise you, brother, I will give my life if I have to. I will save her or die trying. Aadil cried like a child and pulled Henry closer into an embrace. They held on to each other tightly, both crying for some time. Aadil whispered something to Henry. It was going to be their last moment together. All the memories of their childhood passed before their eyes. Their playtime in the fields, fighting for delicious fruits. Henry used to intentionally lose every time. Everything floated before Aadil's eyes. Slowly, Henry's hands fell from his shoulders. He stopped crying. This finally broke the princess. She couldn't hold her tears anymore. Take rest, brother. Aadil slowly laid him on the ground. Let's bury him, Dante said. Or I can take him to your village. The place where he will get a proper burial, someone previously unseen spoke up. It was Patrick. Who are you? The princess demanded. It's Patrick. Someone I trust. I am sorry, Aadil. It was my idea. Patrick apologized. He couldn't even look at him. I was the one who wanted to kill Ronan. You had faith in us. You didn't want to harm that girl or us. We were betrayed by Ronan. It's not your fault. It's ours. And now, Aadil took a deep breath, and wiped his tears. I aim to rectify it. I have brought 4 extra horses for you. I had a feeling you would do something like that. Thank you. I don't understand, you will risk your life for a girl you never met. Who happens to be the sister of the man who took your brother from you. The princess was still bewildered. She is in that mess because of us. We led Crane directly to her. Why do you owe her? Because you made a mistake. You are not one of us. You won't understand. Aadil began to walk away. What is this? The elf looked at Dante. The thieves of Tehosselmania would gladly face death than live with the guilt of destroying an innocent life. Even if the innocent is an enemy, she inhaled a sharp breath. You are only seeing her as an enemy, but he is seeing her as a woman whom he must rescue. I heard Cage only has one entrance, which is the Wall of Flames. Only the ones with Crane's permission can enter and leave. Others perish. And I also heard that life in the cage is almost what people's life was before the War of Treason 71. I know. And something tells me that he knows it too. He pointed his thumb at Aadil. Dante and Aadil tried to convince the princess to go back to her kingdom, but she refused. They didn't understand why she would want to join them on such a dangerous mission. They rode fast, following Dante through forests and mountains. Aadil looked determined, fueled by a desire for revenge. The princess watched him closely, seeing his pain turn into a fierce determination. She knew people dealt with pain differently, and Aadil was using him to keep going. She also watched Dante, leading them with a mysterious air about him. He had saved them from Ronan, but she didn't know anything about him. These lands are beautiful, the princess said to Aadil as they rode together. They didn't need to talk, but she wanted to connect with him. He didn't respond at first, so she again tried saying, why did people always talk about them like they are nightmares? They know the truth, Aadil said. What truth? She asked, curious. These lands might seem nice during the day, but at night, they become dangerous, he explained, sounding cautious. What happens at night? She asked. It's worse than any story you've heard, he replied seriously, but still, didn't look at her. The princess felt frustrated that Aadil didn't bother to even turn to her as they talked, unlike how people treated her in her kingdom. Although it was a golden prison, she was used to being respected, not ignored. Especially by men. Many would just die for her beauty. I think you know I'm right here. Dante smiled, hearing the frustrated tone of the princess. Aadil still had kept his eyes on the road. I am talking to you, thief boy. I know, he still didn't turn to her. You can say that looking at me. He finally turned his face to her. Her hair was dancing with the wind as they rode, and her eyes burned with rage. The young lad said, if we don't get to Cage before the night, we will be the food of the monsters if not worse. Dante pulled his horse and interrupted them saying that they needed rest, even though Aadil wanted to keep going. The horses needed a break, so they stopped. While they rested, the princess came to Dante and asked about the thieves of Tehosselmania. I don't even know your name, princess, and you wish to have a conversation about the craziest people I know. Dante smiled at her and leaned against the tree. Princess Maraid from the hidden light elf kingdom, the princess sat before him. That kingdom? Dante chuckled, I thought princesses weren't allowed to step outside that magical land. Not just princesses. Women are not allowed to do a lot of things. You wish to know why that thief over there is going to die just to save a girl, right? Dante pointed at Aadil. Yes. She nodded, turning only her eyes towards Aadil. Thieves of the Dazark only steal food, water, and medicines. Nothing more. It is against their law to take something more than they need or what is right. But why? She asked. Stealing makes them thieves, but how they do it makes them honorable. I don't understand. People dying in the dry seasons was something very common. Parents often had to bury their children. But one day, a woman left her sick son with her sister and went straight to the capital to get some medicines. When she saw no way of getting her hands on them, she stole them. She was hunted and shot by poisonous arrows, but still, that wounded mother somehow made it to the village and gave the medicines to her son before dying. And that's how the people of Tahirselmania became thieves. To survive. To save lives. And a woman taught them that. The first honorable thief. That is why they respect women so much. She started biting her nails. Mairead glanced at Aadil again. She didn't know how to react. He was still quite a puzzle. Princess, I cannot guarantee that we can protect you too. Aadil came to them. I agree with Aadil. Dante rose to his feet. I am a woman. I can do things you can't. She raised her chin, filled with confidence. Yes, Crane can drag you to his bed, Aadil said rudely. No, Dante interrupted, nodding his head in decline. She plans to reach the warden of the female slaves. He figured her out. But her face and hair are enough to tell the world who she is. She smiled and pulled out a ring, and placed it on her finger, and transformed herself into an ordinary black girl with scars on her face. Dante and Aadil blinked twice. They were silent for a moment. Even the ring on her finger had disappeared. If you had something like that, why did you get caught by Ronan as a light elf? Dante asked her. Because I stole it from the castle. I didn't have it in the first place. Let's go. Aadil broke the silence. Dante knew from which path Crane's men used to take prisoners to cage. Crane had a huge army of fierce knights whose only purpose was slave hunt. They attacked the poorer villages away from the capital and other big cities to ensure there would be no interference from other kings. Sometimes they also found the hidden villages of the thieves or other clans. Whenever they found thieves, they slaughtered everyone except for the children, knowing that the thieves only brought trouble. They were impossible to brainwash, even some children of thieves were way too resistant. Dante assassinated the commander while they all rested on their way back to cage, disguised himself as the commander, and placed Aadil and Mairead with prisoners smartly. They resumed their journey and reached the wall of flames of cage. All the horses and carriages went right through the flames, letting it consume them inside. They all got separated from each other the moment they got inside. Dante quickly disguised himself as a prisoner and mixed with the elder slaves. Aadil was taken to the group of young men, and the warden of female slaves separated Mairead into a group of slaves where all girls were disfigured and imperfect, as she was black and her face filled with cuts and bruises. Mairead felt insulted, not just for her but for everyone. They were judged so brutally for their appearances. She gritted her teeth and clenched her hands into fists. After midnight, Aadil left his tent and went searching for a way to get to the castle of Crane, which stood at the center of the domain, an identical replica of Ronan's castle. This was enough evidence to prove how obsessed he was with Ronan. You just can't stay down for a moment, can you? Someone said from behind.